Monday the 9th of January 2017, 1535 hours Central European Time. This video is more thoughts about my last video, the one where I hoped that I wasn't boring you. This has to do with the realization that all of these individual willing executioner groups actually are collaborating and seeing what one another is doing, what each other of the other willing executioner groups is doing. Now, that's been going on for a whole long time, and that really means I understood that they're even more useless and pathetic, because previously I was under the assumption that they all don't know what the other is doing, but as it turns out they do, which means that they've been completely useless previously, but I was under the assumption that they were completely useless and, in addition to that, ignorant of what everybody else was doing against me, when it turns out that they are not even ignorant of what everybody else is doing against me. They fully know. They fully, absolutely know, and yet they are as useless as they are. Which just goes to show just how useless they really are. But moreover, I realized something else. I've said that, I don't know how far back, I said that already way back during the in the time before I started recording these videos, 2013-ish, early 2014-ish, thereabouts, namely that quintessentially a little worked around these days, considering the current situation and what has been going on for the longest time, is that every single one of those willing executioner groups could, in theory, get me out of this shit, confess to their interest group, beg their forgiving, with the arguing, but look, we got him, and he can show us where we're being ignorant and whatnot and so forth. Which is not me offering to work for you. Don't get this wrong. I'm just saying that the willing executioner groups out there use this kind of rationale, let's call it that, non very commoner, that they can't come clear to their interest group and they can't just confess to their own interest groups what they have been doing, collaborating with all of these others and whatnot, because they'd kill them. Well, the only thing that any of you willing executioners could actually, any single of you willing executioners group could actually do is abandon the company of these other willing executioner groups by getting me out of here and getting me to a place where I can actually look at all of the shit that you did and tell you what of it is shit, what of it ain't ever gonna work, what of it doesn't work because of what reason, and so on and so forth. And to do away with your, depending on which interest group it is, your pseudoscience crap, if you're the fucking Germanensäue. I'm not sure if I could do away with all of the lurchy crap if you were the Abwehramt-Elendskreaturen, because, you know, I can't just snip my fingers and make you see that there ain't no fucking gods and shit like that, so I wouldn't know about that. But my point being, quintessentially, even though I made similar offers in the past, they were less potent, if you will, in the past, under my assumption that none of the willing executioners know much of what the others are doing against me. With that no longer being so, and me having fully understood that they all know what everybody else is doing against me, that offer makes even more sense. So someone out there of you willing executioners should really think about going to their proper IG and saying, we've been bad little fuckers and willing executioners because we were so terribly afraid of you. Like, you know, you probably can put this diplomatically and whatnot, because if you've gotten your actual IGs to the point, as I assume you have, where you've been lying to them for years and years and years and years and years and years, they probably don't really know what's going on anyhow, as of actual functionality of all of this shit, which really means that you should find it easy to lie to them nonetheless. But what I want you to understand is that still, namely, any hypothetically to decide to abandon the company of other willing executioners, group of willing executioners, what I want you to understand is that I renew this offer based on my realization of me having had the situation amongst the willing executioners a little wrong. Now I understand the situation and I hereby renew this offer. I just want you to know that, so that you can't say, if you ever were going to be asked by someone, why didn't you take him up on his offer? Well, we feared that when he found out that we knew all along, he would do whatever. Okay, now I know, here is me renewing that offer. The idea is that whichever fucking willing executioner group abandons completely and utterly any cooperation, any contact, any whatnot with all of the other willing executioner groups and goes to their actual IG proper and explains them what they've been doing these last years. I don't know how long you've been practicing this kind of shit. You might have been doing this for decades maybe, I don't know. I don't claim to know at this point. I haven't tried to analyze this or something, historically puzzle it together. That is something I want you to know. Another little thing, as I'm recording the video here, I'm not sure, I wrote another few points down. I'm not going to get to all of them because I don't want to keep this video too long because I actually have to go buy food and shit. There is another little thing that I forgot to mention in yesterday's. It actually should have been in yesterday's video, which has to do with some of the memory accessing routines. Namely, they are working some kind of trying to work, as always, some kind of mechanism where before memory is being tried to be fully accessed, it is tried to be checked if something like that already is in memory, and then it is trying to be worked as, well, it is in memory already, you don't need to access it. Which sounds a little, well, actually no, it doesn't sound paradoxical. It sounds something, it sounds paradoxical. There, maybe they put inverted comma under, over or around paradox and paradoxical. What this means is that if you have something in your memory, I mean, greatly simplified, ultra simplified, it's, do you remember it? Well, then you don't. Right? It's a, and the reason why I talk about this is because some of these people might not understand, because they are so elaborately probably trying to thwart all kinds of illogics in this, that they don't realize that the underlying thing they're actually doing is saying, if you have it in memory, then don't access this. But to check if it's in memory, it has to be accessed. There's a severe logical flaw there, actual logic, not logic, actual logic, and it doesn't work. However, that's what they're trying to do, and also they try to, you know, they have a lot of things attached to this, which basically have that underlying approach to it. To such an extent, where it's, if I'm familiar with things I've seen or heard, my phases are actually best as possible brought to the point where they ignore with 38 exclamation points, where basically they try to nuke any such content with the illogic, well, I know it anyhow. Right? So if I listen to a song that on YouTube, for instance, and I heard the song a million times before, then there is some mechanism where the phase is actually not listening, coerced into not listening, because, oh, it's that song, I know it already, I needn't listen to it. That thing is worked with, everything. That thing is worked with me trying to access my vocabulary. That thing is worked with names and names of things, that is words for things. That thing is worked on also, once more, occupations and whatnot. They're basically trying to nuke as much as they possibly can from the phases actually being allowed to take part in my life. And with that, I just mean what I do, right? What I watch on as a movie or whatnot. Individual sentences, you know, like, let's see, what kind of movie would you have in a sentence? I've been watching the Star Trek Enterprise thing, as I mentioned in one of the early videos. They probably say a lot, yes, Captain, or something like that. So that sentence like that, yes, Captain, if I heard it before, which of course I have, if I watch the entire season, then they ignore that sentence, right? You know, it's, yes, Captain, oh, we had that strike. You know, they nuke it because I know it already, right? This is the kind of thing they're working. I know I'm not explaining this right, which partially is due to the fact that I'm being ever so slightly sabotaged in trying to say this, but moreover because it's really not so easy to put into words here, sitting in this torture field, talking to a bunch of idiots, knowing them to be idiots, right? Know your target group. That is another thing that they thwart with. That is actually something that, to a certain extent, somewhere plays into the lectures on war, know your target group, because it touches on the propaganda thing, where who are you targeting your propaganda at, and know your target group in communication means tell it in a way that they fucking get it in their thick heads, which is what all my videos are. See, I am aware of my target group. I know which video targets which people, and I know that they deliberately, part of their discrediting out there with Verfassungsschutz and whatnot, they coerce videos to all the wrong people, making them believe that I were targeting them, that I were addressing them. I don't mean targeting as something aggressive, addressing them. And they are forced, these are routines, those people are forced into interpreting this as if it were addressed at them. When without these routines, they will simply understand that I'd be talking to completely different people, not them, right? That's part of this thing. So, that thing briefly touched on. It's getting a little dark here. Then there's something, talking of memory routines, they have some type of idiotic refreshing memory, once more in an idiotic computer analogy, which happens sometimes, for instance, when I try to sleep. They keep my mind busy by having it coercively, the phases, randomly drag anything, or at least to me there is no discernible pattern, out of memory, just in order to refresh it, right? So I'm trying to sleep, and my phases are coerced into remembering any could be anything, could be, really anything. Could be me walking down the street, could be me, could be my part of my experience in past jobs, could be any, and little things. It's not elaborate things, just little things, could be a recipe for something to cook, could be anything. It just try to refresh memory by accessing it. I'm not sure to which extent they try to actually, and that would be completely delusional, the idea of being able to wrongly rewrite it, right? There's a lot of people out there who have this completely pseudoscientifically wrong. This is the pseudoscientific people, this particular shit, who think that if they access memory and drag something out of memory and then thwart it and try to shove it down, then they can rewrite memories or some shit like that. That is also something they're doing, I know. Then there's some more word idiocy. Atemzug, Lungenzug, drawing breath and deeply inhaling down into your lung. In German it's called Lungenzug, and that last word, Zug, actually comes from pulling something. You pull air down, but as a word itself, as a noun, it actually spells train. So there's this shit about my breathing being a train, that there were tracks on which it ran, and that some trains go faster than others and don't make a stop at every station. I ain't fucking you. That's what they tried to virtually have happen in my breathing apparatus. No shit. That's another little word, craziness shit. Then this is also something touching back on yesterday's video, the thing with the sleep of the unjust. My phase is knowing that I'm just and not unjust. That is, so if the other doesn't work, then what is tried to be worked instead is that, okay, well then you are just. And that is worked in my phases as psycho warfare to the extent that every time I go to bed and lie down to sleep, my phases are coerced into the fear that I were lying down to find the sleep of the just, which really means that my phases are try to be terrified of me trying to sleep because they fear I lie down to die. Okay? Seeking sleep, trying to get sleep, being worked on my phases is greatly simplifying as them being tried to artificially be made fearful over death coming their way or I seeking death or whatnot. That's something worked here. And the last thing I'm going to mention, just a little after I recorded the video yesterday, the not to bore you video, and not all that much later. It's not people who got the time to watch the video actually, okay, because this was really very quickly thereupon. Somebody tried to rework particular of the proof-made routines, namely ultra specifically, which makes me assume, this is an assumption, but I'm pretty sure of it, that at least a fair amount of these specific routines actually with the willing executioners and also amongst all of them have that routine's author on a list with the willing executioners. In Germany it would be called Sachbearbeiter. Every single routine on their side has simply gives the credit who came up with the routine, and if I get rid of a routine, that same Sachbearbeiter is looked up in their list and it is shoved forward to that same Sachbearbeiter saying he got out of this one. Try retouching it. The reason why I mention it is because this is wonderful news. Because they're keeping such records of whichever type in whichever way, but where individual fuckers are credited for individual routines, and they have that on file out there. Even if they run it in their heads only, I can get that shit out of their heads. Trust me, if I apply a bit of torture on them, I will be able to get it out of their head, or they just spit it out where it's written or on a computer or something, which means it's awesome because they are actually documenting a who to torture list for me. See? Well, what that means is I don't have to torture 70 fuckers to get to the one right fucker. I have a list one day in my hand where it says then that particular torture routine courtesy of then that particular fucker of then that willing executioner group. Okay? I want you to understand. I love that. That is awesome. It helps me in the torture to come. That is magnificent. So, that's this video. Thank you.